Malcontent News is a team of journalists, activists, and researchers with three key missions. A commitment to show an unfiltered view of the before, during, and after of key events, live, as it happens. To defend the First Amendment using our rights of a free press. And to amplify the voices of underrepresented individuals including Black, Indigenous, persons of color, and the LGBTQIA+ community. Our team is committed to seeking equality for all and holding those in power accountable. The easiest way to support Malcontent News is to bookmark our website at malcontentnews.com, like and follow us on Facebook, subscribe to us on YouTube, and follow us on Twitter, TikTok, Twitch, Instagram, and in the Google News app. To provide financial support, you can become a patron, make a one-time donation through Venmo, or link your Twitch account to your Amazon Prime account and use your free subscription to subscribe to Malcontent News. Thank you for supporting independent journalism and for being a malcontent. That is friggin' fantastic. How are y'all doing, malcontents? It appears we have a frozen camera image. That is unbelievable. Hey there, TikTok. We're going to have technical difficulties on the main feed because we have a frozen camera image. Go figure. Let's see what we can do here with the frozen camera image. Is that better? Hey, we got camera. I have no idea why that happened, malcontents. All right, let's start it all over again. Good evening. I am the Malcontent. This is Malcontentment Happy Hour, and welcome. We're back in Studio 3. Look at this. We've got TikTok over here. TikTok's like, why are we looking at the side of this guy's head over here? We got a lot of stuff that we're going to be covering tonight. We're going to be talking about COVID, the Omicron variant. We're going to be taking your questions. We're going to be taking your questions, TikTok. If you see me looking over here on our 4 channels on a Malcontent News TV, then you know I'm talking to TikTok at that moment. Legitimately made French. We've already got a comment over here about French toast. So here's the inside. Let me give you the inside story about French toast. And here's the other thing I should say, particularly to our, because we probably have a national and global audience over on TikTok tonight. We are in the middle of a big windstorm here. It will be picking up and getting worse as we are broadcasting. Probably as we get towards show end is when we're like going to be right at the beginning of the worst of it. Lately, we've had a lot of windstorms. And lately, around this area, power has gone out just thinking about it. So if we all of a sudden just drop TikTok, you would still have us, but the room will get very dark. But everybody else, if we drop, then that's because we lost power. So we'll see what's going on. Again, a lot to talk about. We're going to be talking about COVID and Omicron. We have a ton of information to share because a ton of information is coming in. The other thing we're going to be talking about, some local Seattle politics. We're going to talk about the recall vote for Sawant. We're also going to talk a little bit about Mayor Jenny Durkin and those missing tests. We're going to talk about Alan Swinney. Because we're broadcasting on TikTok, I can only refer to him as a tough lad. I can't refer to him as the real name because TikTok will knock us off of the air if I say the can't say how full of themselves they are, those young men in their black and yellow. We're also going to be talking about some things that have been going on, some chess maneuvers over in Trump land that should probably have you concerned, actually, regardless of your political stripes. And with that said, why don't we go ahead and dive into the COVID update? Y'all on TikTok are going to be a little bit of a disadvantage because you don't get to see the slides. Well, if I turn it so I can show you the slides, I can't see your questions. And on the top of that, let's do this. I think there's like something here, like I can do like, isn't there something like I can, there's like supposed to be some setting where I can turn off guest requests, but then I can have a Q&A for the questions so I can see the questions as they're coming through. Oh, shut up. When did they finally add that feature? Wow, I am. All right, I'm not seeing the option here. We'll just see what happens. All right, we'll see what happens. So this is what I'm going to do for you, TikTok. No, I can't do it. You're just going to have to listen to me talk TikTok. Sorry. For the rest of you, or who was watching on Malcontent News TV, we have that for you. Ta-da. Do not tell me I have another frozen monitor. Be very unhappy about this. This is what happens when you have forced updates before showtime. And if you're thinking I hate forced updates, you better believe it. You have to be kidding me. Let me do this. We'll try one other thing. This all worked. Well, that's not what I want to show either. Shabbat shalom to you also, Kristen. Thank you for joining, and apologies for all of this machinations we are going through. Ooh, did that finally do it? There we go. I think we're in business now. Let's try this again. All right, we're really starting. Let's talk about Omicron. Omicron was declared, if you've heard this before, you're going to hear it again, was declared a variant of concern by the WHO, World Health Organization on November 26th. What does that mean? There are multiple criteria for that to happen. The first thing is it needs to have genetic changes that are predicted or known to affect the characterization, such as transmissibility, disease severity, immune escape, diagnosis, or therapeutic escape, and there has to have been identified as causing significant community transmission or multiple COVID-19 clusters in multiple countries with increasing relative prevalence alongside increasing number of cases over time or other apparent epidemiological impacts. And then it has to have one of the following three things, just one: increase in transmissibility or detrimental change in COVID-19 epidemiology, or increase in virulence, how sick it makes people, or change in clinical disease presentation, or decrease in effectiveness of public health and social measures, or available diagnostics, vaccines, and therapeutics. I think it is safe to say at this point that we have reached a point that, yes, this was properly called a variant of concern. And one of the things that initially concerned scientists, epidemiologists, virologists, and doctors is all of the mutations. 32 mutations on spike proteins alone. Going to talk a little bit about spike proteins on that too. So last week we had talked about what to look for next. And there's some things here that we have some answers, and there's some things that we're moving closer to answers on. So the first thing, is Omicron more transmissible than Delta? We have two studies now, neither peer reviewed, but we have data not just out of South Africa now. We now have data out of Denmark and the UK, and it's starting in Sweden. And all of these are indicating that, yes, it is more transmissible than Delta, and a lot. And we've brought receipts. If you go to Malcontent News TV, if you want to see the slides, you want to see the receipts, you can do that. Ooh, wow. I just got like breaking news sent to me about, we do weather here. And I just got some breaking news sent to me about a very, very tragic situation in Arkansas. And we will talk about that later, but we're going to stick to Omicron right now. The next one, is it more vaccine resistant? We have three studies. We have a very small study out of South Africa. That one was done by Dr. Alex Segal, who is the person that essentially discovered, confirmed the existence of the Omicron variant, not Dr. Angelique Kutze. We have another small study, very small study, that came out of Germany today. That one is even smaller. And then we have Pfizer's statement, which followed up Dr. Segal's statement. And so it's very probable that it is more vaccine resistance, that there is less vaccine effectiveness. The last one, does Omicron cause more severe symptoms? We don't know. And anybody telling you that they know isn't telling you the whole story, and we're going to get into it, because there's mixed data. And I'm going to get into why there's mixed data and why it is hard to tease out what the real severity is. Next thing is, if you're on TikTok, we have these videos. Right now, what I'm going to show you, you've already seen. If you're on the rest of the channels, you haven't seen this yet. Going to go and look at detected cases in South Africa through December 10. If you looked at the data today, if you looked at our video, if you're tracking it yourself, you've probably seen numbers went down today. Yay, yay. Yeah, it's not yay. There's been a technical issue with the data, and that technical issue has actually been going on since last Friday. And that technical issue is getting worse. That's according to the NICD, which is the organization that produces these numbers in South Africa, in their release today. And there is a significant amount of data for positive tests in particular that was missing out of the data today. So this drop that we saw today, yeah, it's artificial. Now, here's something to keep in mind. When they fix this data issue, we're going to see a big bump when they adjust it. And that's why we say, don't look at the day-to-day data. You got to look at the 7-day moving average, because that smooths this out. And the 7-day moving average, even with the data problems, is going up. So next, when they fix this data, we don't know if it's next week. We don't know if it's over the weekend. You're going to see a big spike, because it's going to be all this missing test data all of a sudden pops in. Don't worry, that it's an anomaly. So we have an anomaly today. We're going to have another anomaly coming up. And there's some anomaly in the data when we're not seeing all the positive tests. And again, that came out from the NICD. 83,515 tests, at least 19,018, 19018, came back positive. But we know that number's bigger, but we don't know how big. The next thing is recovery rate. South Africa Department of Health releases this number, and there was no update today. They didn't release. Now, why didn't they? Because the data's not good. They don't have all the data for positive tests. So they can't release rate of recovery. So we only have through December 9, and it's dropped to 92.8%. Now, that may sound like, let me explain what rate of recovery is. There's nothing to panic about here yet. Rate of recovery is person is tested positive. They are now in the hospital. We do not know, because they are still in the hospital, are they going to get better or aren't they going to get better? And we don't know. So that is why that rate of recovery number is going down, and why it's going down so fast, because hospitalizations are going up really fast in South Africa. And we brought receipts for that. And when we look at week over week, it's mind melting. So Again, don't look at this 92. The other thing is like in Delta, research team dug through. The problem is that there's no easy way to look at this data. It's not like it's on a chart. You have to look at daily reports, one at a time, and find the number. It's not fun. So I can't stand here and look you in the eyes, look you TikTok in the eyes and say, yes, by golly, we have gone through and looked at all of those numbers all the way through, and the basement is this. What we were able to find is the basement's around 85%, and that was at the height of the Delta. And so we don't know. All right, this is the one that we want to talk about here. New hospitalizations in Gauteng province. TikTok, we got a video up for this. You can go check out the TikTok. The rest of you haven't seen this yet. Might have seen it on our Facebook page. Gauteng province, 1,720 new hospitalizations this week. Now that's 5 days. That's Monday through Friday. We don't have a full week. If you're looking at that 2193 and you're going, hey, that's great. They're at 2193. If I play math in my head, 1720, then it'll be at about the same. No, that's not what's happening. If you go back, and on TikTok, you can go back and look on our prior videos. If you go back to the 3rd, a week ago, and you look at the data that was available then, there were about 880 new hospitalizations reported for COVID patients through that same period. How did it jump to 2,193 last week? Conspiracy, they're cooking the books. No, that's not what's going on. When a person goes into a hospital, it's not like a credit card transaction. It's not like, and then all of a sudden that goes into a central database and everybody knows that that person's in the hospital and everybody knows that person has a positive COVID test and everybody knows that that's why that person's in the hospital. That's not how it works. Hospitals use disparate systems for tracking all of this, and you have somebody that is gathering that information. Some of that stuff is sent to the South African Department of Health by fax. By the way, that's how it works in the United States too. Some of that stuff is literally someone picking up the phone and going, hey, here, let me give you our numbers for the hospital today. Some of that stuff is sent electronically. And then you have a data nerd like me who puts all of that numbers together. Not that I do that for the state, but I am a data nerd and I pull a bunch of numbers together. And that's how you get those reports. But those reports don't come in real time. They may come a week after the fact, once a week in a consolidated report. And we can use examples of like here right in the United States. State of Nebraska, they report their data to the CDC once a week. That's it. Florida, I don't even want to talk about what Florida does because it's BS. So don't look at that 1720 and go, yay, because the reality is that new hospitalization number is actually probably significantly larger based on the patterns we've seen from previous weeks. This is the part where I was preparing these slides today where I was like, yikes. Yes, that's exactly right. It means that people have not moved from recovery to resolved. Exactly. I think a lot of us thought that COVID was over. It's not over. It's like it's back with a vengeance. Tonight, or I shouldn't say tonight, yesterday morning, that would be 2 mornings ago because it's their yesterday morning now, there were 2,512 COVID patients in Gauteng province. Gauteng province is 15.7 million people. We do not, if you're trying to like, how do I compare this? We don't have a state. Pennsylvania is close to 13 million people. New York is close to 20 million people. There's nothing in between those two states. So Gauteng would sit in the middle. So you could look at New York and squint, or you could look at Pennsylvania and squint if you wanted to try to get a kind of comparison. That's a 67% increase in hospitalized patients. That's not new hospitalizations. That's people that are in the hospital as of 2 days ago. 2005, that is up 67% from a week ago. 2,100 are in acute care. 412 are in high care ICU. In Africa and other countries, they have this middle spot. Like in the United States, most of us have, you're in acute care, you're in a regular hospital bed. It might be a surgical ward, it might be an orthopedic, but you're in a regular hospital bed, or we have ICU. And we have some very temporary states in between, and I don't want to get all pedantic in that. In African nations and some other nations, they have a third category in between called high care. Generally, high care means you need more. You're not just kind of in a bed, and I say this semi-flippantly. Someone's checking your temperature and you're getting, you're needing intravenous medicine and stuff like that, but you don't need monitoring. And high care generally means you're at least on oxygen support. It's not one for one, but that's a lot of what's putting people in high care. Anyway, that's what high care and ICU is. 331 people are on oxygen support, 69 on ventilators, 9% of all COVID patients, Gauteng province, are in the ICU. Let's go over into the increases. That's a 37.7% increase week over week of people in high care. That actually might be good news, but it might not. There's a 47% increase of people week over week requiring oxygen. Now, patient load went up 67%, oxygen use is 47%. That might be good news, but it might not, because so many people are coming to the hospital so quickly. And I want to talk about disease progression. 59% increase in acute care patients. Now, that isn't necessarily good news, because we had a 67% increase in total patients, but a 59% increase in acute care patients. That means high care and ICU is going up. There's a bigger percentage slice. 92% increase to that bigger slice, a 92% increase, and almost doubling in the ICU patients. We're seeing disease progression. And 138% increase in the number of patients requiring ventilators. That's a big jump. But remember, 9% of the total hospital population across Gauteng province. When I say hospital, I don't mean a single, I mean all hospitals in Gauteng province, public and private. It's 9% total. But it's almost doubled, and the number of people that are moving to ventilators is going up even faster than that. So what's going on? There's good news, there's bad news, we can't figure it out. Let's remember this. You don't get COVID and drop dead the next day. That's not how COVID works. You get exposed. It takes, depending on the variant, and this is like the stuff we don't know about Omicron, you get exposed. And from exposure to you're infectious, you have a viral load, takes anywhere from 2 to 5 days. It seems like it's a lot faster with Omicron, but we don't have proof of that. It only appears faster, not putting a number. Then when you go from once you get infectious, you can pop a test. So at that point, you can pop a test. Once you go from that 2 to 5 days, you're infectious, it's 1 to 3 days to I don't feel good. I feel my cough. I'm really tired, and I got wicked aches. I think I need a test. I'm gonna go get a COVID test. Takes 1 to 3 days to get to that point. 24 hours for a PCR test. Best case scenario to come back and go, you got COVID. Then it takes maybe a week for you to go back and forth to an emergency department a couple of times, or a walk-in clinic, where you're like, okay, we're going to try this. Okay, we're going to try that. And then it gets through about a week, and it's like, okay, we've tried everything. Now we're going to have to put you in the hospital because this stuff isn't working. Then you might be in that acute care or high care, moving on increasing amounts of oxygen and meeting the crowds of therapeutics. That might take another 7 or 10 days. Then you get moved to ICU, but ICU doesn't mean you're on a ventilator. You go to ICU, it just means that you're on BiPAP, and then they move you to a full rebreather, and that progression may take 7 or 10 days. Then you go on the ventilator, and then that progression could take 2 to 4 weeks. And then you have a negative outcome. If you're playing at home and adding the math up, that could be as short as 4 or 5 weeks. It could be as long as 6 or 7 weeks from exposure to yeet. I have to say yeet because of TikTok. So we don't have enough data. And that's why I'm saying what we're seeing with those ICU numbers going up, the ventilator numbers are going up, we're seeing disease progression. We just don't know. And anybody who tells you they know is full of it. And that includes people like Dr. Angelique Coutset. They're guessing because we don't know. If you were here last week, you don't get to see this one, but I'm going to explain it to you on the air because this one is really important here. If you were on last week, you saw we pulled up this chart, and this is where there was some Not liking what we're seeing here in this chart. What we're showing, explain it here to TikTok. I'm going to look over the TikTok camera, explain it for a minute. We did a very simple analysis, and I stress simple. We looked at number of positive COVID tests for the private week, for the past week. And then we looked at the number of new hospitalizations that happened the week after that. It's a very simple model. There's not rooted really in any science. I did ask a few epidemiologists, it's like, is this just, am I wasting time doing this? And there's just, as long as you preface it as, this is, you know, it's more than throwing darts blindfolded, but it's close to throwing darts. I'm like, okay. So we're not throwing, we're throwing precision darts, but maybe somebody's playing loud music while you're doing it. So if we looked at hospitalizations for the week that ended on the 21st, then we're looking at the COVID tests that happened during the week of the 14th, the week before. There were 2,188 tests detected across all of South Africa, and there were 628 new hospitalizations. Now, we know during that week that ended on 11/14 that that was still a lot of Delta because the intersection hadn't happened. They hadn't flipped. So then if we looked at the next week, so that's tests ending on 11/21. Now, tests on that week are getting a lot closer to 50-50, and probably by the last day, it's probably 70% Omicron, 30% Delta. There were 3,923 positives, and then in the week that followed, 1,215 new hospitalizations. That's 30.9%, which is yikes. Then if we get to 12/5, because remember last week, I was like, we're just going to throw darts. We don't know. We get to 12/5. There were, during the week to 11/28, there were 13,826 positive tests. Those are almost all Omicron. If we look at the hospitalizations for the period that ended on 12/5, it came in at 20.6%. If you remember, I predicted 20%. So I'll take the W. I'm taking the win. So it came at 20.6%. Then last week, when we talked about these numbers, right, we looked at the week coming up. And one of the things that I said was 20% is not going to cut it. We can't be at 20%, not at the rate that the new cases are growing. If we're seeing 20% hospitalizations with this new case, their hospitals are going to be overrun. So where are we at? There were 70,258 actual tests for the week ending. That's still projected because we don't have the full set of, I'm sorry. The test is actual. The hospitalization is projected. Through 12/5, 70,258 positive tests. That is 95% Omicron. And we learned today that the number actually may be a little higher, which is good news. Believe it or not, that is good news. We're projecting that there will be, based on the 5 days of data that we have for hospital admissions for all of South Africa, we're projecting there'll be 5,428 new hospitalizations for the week ending this Sunday. That would be a 7.7% hospitalization rate. So in other words, 7.7% of anybody who got a positive COVID test last, but remember we're doing that progression. So that's why it's like, it's still throwing darts because we don't know exactly from that progression of positive test to hospital bed. Do we have a benchmark? Like, is 7.7% good? Is it bad? It's not good. But I think it's going to go down more. And actually, remember, it's probably even lower. That's why I say more positive cases in this model is good news. More hospitalizations in this model, bad news. So you should be cheering for big data error in the test cases and for our estimated math to be wrong for the next 2 days for new hospitalizations. That's what you need to be cheering for. We do have a benchmark. State of Montana. Now, I get Montana's 1 million people and South Africa's almost 60 million people. We're just benchmarking test to hospital. In Montana, it's 5.4%. I don't know why I have that number memorized, but I do. So 5.4% of the people that popped a positive COVID test so far in the state of Montana end up in a hospital bed. So we have a benchmark. So 7.7% is higher, but South Africa appears to have a higher hospitalization rate overall than the United States. So, and this is why we made a TikTok video about if you're trying to figure out what's going on in the United States, South Africa is not the country to look to. The country to look to is probably the UK. So, what about next week? We have 5 days of test data. And right now, what we're estimating as best as we can is 115,000 positives. And that is, we know that's low because we know there's missing data. So we know the positives is low. If we hold at 7.7%, that is going to be 8,855 new hospitalizations in a week across South Africa. They are still not to red alert. They're still below, even with this numbers, they're still below where they were at with Delta. But then the question starts go, what happens the week after that? And what does that potentially show for other countries? And we know that other countries are already sounding the alarm on this. And we'll talk a little bit about this a little later. I talked about transmissibility. We have 2 studies now. There was a study out of South Africa. We talked about that last week. Yeah, I'm seeing a comment on TikTok about Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is bad. Massachusetts is really bad. And where I grew up, central Massachusetts is on its knees. There are a couple of states in the Northeast, parts of New York, really bad. New York City, where they made all those people get vaccinated, like 90% of the people are vaccinated, hasn't had a COVID death in 4 days. It's like vaccines work. Okay, we have 2 studies on transmissibility. We had the South Africa study we talked about last week. We have another study that came out of Japan. That's on 12/8. The paper was published today. I don't read Japanese, but I can read charts. So the South Africa study estimated that Omicron is about 2.5 times greater than the Delta variant for transmissibility. It gave it a baseline R naught of 15. That's about equal to measles. And they gave it a range of about 12 to 17, with the midline being 15. We talked about that last week on Happy Hour. I know it's not very happy hour right now. We talked about that on Happy Hour last week. And it's yikes. The numbers are yikes. And I'll get into what that could mean for Washington State. The study out of Japan, not peer reviewed, done by one scientist. Scientist works for the government there. He is evaluating the risk because the Olympics are, remember, they had to hold off the whole Olympics thing and the whole Olympics thing. So he'd been doing the numbers for the Olympics. So if anything, he doesn't have a vested interest to tilt the scale in the other way if you want to just put on your tinfoil conspiracy hat. The other thing I want to be really clear, very respected scientist. The estimate for 2.5 last week came out, very respected group of scientists. The vaccine study that came out, I know a lot, it's only 12. I was like, that was Alex Segal. This guy knows his stuff. Is 12, no, 12 isn't enough, but I'm not going to throw his study out based on who it came from and the reputation that he is defending and protecting and build. All right, get to the point. The Japan study is worse. They're estimating it is 4.2 times greater transmissibility than Delta. That would give it a R naught, a transmissibility baseline of 20. I didn't stutter, 20. That would be the most contagious illness, bacterial or viral, that mankind has seen since the end of the Ice Age and anything that has thawed out from the end of the Ice Age. That the theoretical top limit for R naught is 40. And basically at R naught 40, right, 40, it's like you're breathing, you're going to get sick. That's what R naught 40 is. This is above measles. So, and 15 is measles. And that's why I say for transmissibility and looking at some other data, brought receipts, it's getting pretty close to safe to say this is way more transmissible than the original strain, alpha, beta, delta, gamma, mu. Those are the ones probably we have to care about on that list. We also want to talk about South Africa. I know, particularly in our local audience, we have a lot of parents. A lot of parents worried about kids, what's going on there. The chart that I'm showing, sorry, TikTok. And we're going to do a TikTok on this chart, by the way. We just couldn't get to it today. We will do a TikTok on the graph that I'm showing here. Chart that I'm showing comes from NICD. It comes from their surveillance report. They update these once a week, NICD out of South Africa. And if you're looking at this chart, what you're looking at, what we're showing is transmissibility in South Africa for children. And then it is broken up by under 1 years, 1 to 4 years, 5 to 9 years, 10 to 14 years, 15 to 19 years. And then for a comparative line, adults 19 and above. And if we look at this line and look at this chart, here's the one thing that jumped out at me is the 5 to 9 year olds. It is already way above any of the previous um, for 5 to 9 year olds. It's just off the chart. The other thing is we talk about this in statistics. We talk about that like in business. We're looking for the hockey stick. What do you think of a hockey stick, right? You got a line, then it goes like this. These lines aren't a hockey stick. These lines are skyscrapers. They're going up like a Falcon 9 rocket from SpaceX. They're just going straight up. And when you look at the comparative lines, the only thing that comes even remotely close was the beta variant, which was in South Africa during their second wave. And even then, it's not close. That 5 to 9 year old line is a rocket ship just going up. No children in South Africa under 12 are vaccinated. It is not available. They have no boosters in South Africa. They are panic rolling out boosters right now. All of the intel and the instructions from the country was distributed today to do an aggressive booster program for the 24.5% of people already vaccinated. So what are we seeing in the real world, right? We talked about baseline R naught. Baseline R naught is, think of that as the laboratory. If you just put a bunch of humans in a metaphorical petri dish and you introduce them to some sort of disease, and they're not taking any cautions, they're hanging out, they're talking to each other, they're sharing food, they're shaking hands, they're doing human stuff, and they have no natural immunity or protection whatsoever in any way, shape, or form to this illness that is in there. That's baseline. That's that 15 and 20 that we're talking about. But the reality is, we don't do that. Some places we wear masks. Some people have disease-acquired immunity. There's people who are vaccinated, right? So we have some of this buffer. So this is when we get into what we call functional RT. South Africa functional RT is estimated to be between 3 and 4. It was at 3.09 on December 8. That is from NICD. Doubling time is 3 days. That means the number of cases are doubling in South Africa every 3 days. It's the dominant strain. It's over 90% of anything that is genomic sequenced. RT is forecasted to peak. Functional RT there, 3.8 at 12/19. Why so fast? That doubling every 3 days. By 12/19, in theory, Omicron's going to start running out of people to infect because it will, on paper, potentially have infected almost everybody in South Africa. This is the thing that's keeping some of us up at night. Sorry about wiggling the table there, TikTok. That forecast is from Dr. Trevor Bedford. He works for Fred Hutch, and he is an outstanding epidemiologist and does tremendous research. We have looked to Dr. Bedford and his evidence for guidance almost through the entire pandemic. All right, UK. Now, what are they seeing in the United Kingdom? They are seeing a functional RT, functional R naught, between 3.25 and 5.06. Target is 406. That's as of December 6th. Doubling time in the UK every 2.5 days. It is predicted to take over Delta. Remember when we were worried about Delta AY42 and we named it we named it View 21 because of the variant of like it was VOR variant of research or something like that. and we called it View 21. We gave it a name because there were some epidemiologists who were saying, please don't call it Delta Plus because it is not Delta Plus. That is not accurate. It is its own sublineage off of that and not a sublineage of Delta Plus. So we're like, okay, we'll call it View 21, COVID View 21. Yeah, we don't have to worry about that one anymore. I guess you could think that's good news because it's going to get obliterated. It'll be the dominant strain in 2 to 4 weeks. And in Scotland, which seems to be the growing epicenter for Omicron in the UK, it'll probably be the dominant strain there in 7 to 14 days. Denmark, we don't have an RT. We just know the functional RT is worse than 4 because their doubling time is every 2 days. It is out of control in Denmark. And they are predicted to be the dominant strain in 7 to 14 days. Right now, it's 5% of cases. So what does this mean? We talk about functional RT, and I'm throwing out these numbers 3, 4, 5. What does it mean? That means if I got Omicron and functional RT is 4, on paper, I'm going to give it to 4 people. And then those 4 people are going to give it to 4 people, and so on. And remember the hair ad? I'm dating myself. I don't have hair. Dating myself. Oh, we're going to go into that. Omicron isn't killing anyone. You should have been here earlier. We were kind of talking about that and about why we're not there yet. But you keep cheering. What does this mean for Washington State? We talked about this last week. Our functional RT, a real RT in Washington State during the Delta surge, got up to about 2.1. Technically on paper, we were over 4 because remember, Washington was first. We first. January 21, first confirmed case. Then in Kirkland, Life Care Center, tore through there. And we had a very, very high functional RT because it was in this very small confined area in a nursing home, not a nursing home, a skilled nursing center, and I guess a nursing home and some hospice over there. And they didn't realize that they were dealing with COVID, the original strain, for about 2 weeks. They didn't figure it out until the first person went yeet. So that's a little outlier. I like to explain that because sometimes people get pedantic and they go, it was 4.5 at the beginning of February. I'm like, whatever. Why is it so much lower, right? Because Delta was between 5 and 6. Well, because you have people that were immunized. You have people that have disease-acquired immunity. You have people that wore masks. You had people that worked from home. You had kids that were learning remotely. You had some of this happening a little bit when kids weren't in school at all. So this is one of the reasons why functional RT was lower. If Omicron becomes the dominant variant of Washington State, then we're looking at a functional RT here of about 3.5 to 5.5, based on what we're seeing in other countries. And the UK is a particularly good proxy for the United States. All right, what do we know about vaccine escape? We know a little bit more, but we don't know enough to go, yay, or, there's still small studies. We're still figuring it out. I mentioned the first study. That was the South Africa study, which was done by Dr. Alex Segal. That's with 12 people. That was backed up 12 hours later when Pfizer came out and said, yes, we have done our own research. And basically, Pfizer reached the same conclusions that Dr. Alex Segal found. 2 doses of the Pfizer BioNTech vaccine lost 50 to 60% reduction in its effectiveness. Now, that's 50 to 60% reduction in effectiveness in catching COVID in the first place against Omicron, and that's versus Delta. That projects out, according to Pfizer, about a 10 to 14% increased chance of being hospitalized. Pfizer is saying, and there is a growing chorus of epidemiologists, virologists, and scientists that are saying that the vaccine, the Pfizer vaccine, is going to keep you off a ventilator and keep you from going yeet. And that's the bar. That's where it's at. 2 doses with booster, they found there was a 25% reduction. It didn't bring you back all the way up, but it provided some additional buffer. And they feel that because you got that 25%, it's probably going to provide some additional buffer on preventing hospitalization. There's a German study. It was published today. It was announced on Wednesday. It was run in Bloomberg, and then everybody picked it up off of Bloomberg. I couldn't find any other source. Just saw the same Bloomberg story being repeated everywhere. Did get a chance to read the study tonight. I had to skim it. It's very small. It's even smaller than Dr. Alex Segal, 7 people. There are a lot of respected universities, researchers, and scientists who have multiple names attached to that. It is based on the initial cases that they have seen in Germany. This study is a little more alarming. 2 doses Pfizer, or 2 doses Moderna, or 1 dose AstraZeneca with a Pfizer booster 6 months later. That German study concludes it's a naught, it's a 0. It doesn't protect you. There are not enough antibody titers in there to provide any protection. That goes against the Pfizer study. That goes against what Dr. Alex Segal said. Let's talk about AstraZeneca if you're international. We don't have that in the United States. Do they have AstraZeneca in that? Someone tell me in the comments. Is AstraZeneca in Canada? I think they have it in Canada. We don't have it in the United States. AstraZeneca, which is the viral vector, and I was team J&J, which is also viral. AstraZeneca totally took the short bus to vaccine school. The analogy that I've used is if Johnson & Johnson took the short bus, AstraZeneca was behind the gym smoking cigarettes through the entire 9th through 12th grade, and they just graduated because the teachers didn't want to deal with it in class anymore. It's like, you're graduated. It's good enough. They could read. They could do math. They got enough to kind of get by through life, and that's about all they got out of their education. 0. They found that if 2 doses Pfizer and you get a booster, again, they're seeing that lift, but they're not seeing as much lift as the study that Dr. Segal did, and they're not seeing as much lift that the Pfizer data is saying. What about Moderna? I can already read your minds. What about Moderna? Hasn't released information, and we only have this study of 7 people out of Germany. I don't know. Probably going to be close to Pfizer. What about Johnson & Johnson? As somebody who got the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, ironically, because of South Africa and how effective it was against the beta variant, which is those people got Johnson & Johnson for 2 reasons. One and done. All right, 1 shot, I'm done. Or, wow, all this study is saying this is the best one against the beta variant. I'm going to hedge my bet on variants and go, I'm going to go Johnson & Johnson because that's at the top of the line. And then Johnson & Johnson moved to the back of the pack, and AstraZeneca even worse with Delta. And is J&J like, I don't know, but probably not good because the viral vector vaccines have not performed as well. For the subunit, like I know people, Novavax, there's no research on that. There's no data on that. But all of the vaccine research they've done at this point has been based on the existing spike proteins from the earlier variants, not Omicron. So, and this is a bummer because I know there were people who were vaccine hesitant, and they were legit vaccine hesitant, and they were waiting for Novavax because it's a subunit vaccination. It's old school. This technology's been around forever. And I know there's some people who have been waiting for it, legit waiting for it. And my heart's broken for y'all. They're saying they're working on a new formula. We don't know. Muscles and Nursing says, a trusted research. J&J has shown better T-cell response than Pfizer and Moderna, but T-cell response creates a cytokine storm, which is potentially not 100%. What did Pfizer say? So Pfizer came out and said 2 doses are 40 times less effective against Omicron compared to the original SARS-CoV-2. 2 doses with booster increased it 25 times. You lose 40, you get the booster, you get 25 back. So you're not all the way there. The important thing here is there is growing data that vaccine effectiveness with Omicron has dropped significantly. We're seeing this in Europe. We're seeing this in South Africa. There is also growing data, though. It does a really good job of keeping you out of the hospital. This, of course, is good news for the vaccinated. This is not good news for the unvaccinated because the unvaccinated have been enjoying a buffer from the vaccinated. With earlier strains, it would be unusual to get a breakthrough case to the point that you are shedding virus, you're breathing out virus, that you are contagious. We're not seeing that with Omicron. And the challenge is going to be vaccinated people who are just, do I have a cold? Where's the Dayquil? I'm just going to take some Dayquil and motor through this because that's the American way. Like the rest of the world doesn't do that. The rest of the world like stays home. And like the rest of the world, your boss isn't calling up saying, I don't care if you're sick, get your ass in here or you're fired. This is like almost an exclusive United States thing. Anyway, that's going to be the thing for the unvaccinated. Disease acquired immunity, I don't like it because that's not natural immunity. It's disease acquired immunity because you have to get COVID to get there in the first place. For disease acquired immunity on escape, there was a study that came out. I'm just going to go through this real quick. 240% drop in protection. It's darn close to kind of say like the German study. And in that German study and in the Pfizer study, there were people that had disease acquired immunity and then got vaccine on top of it, and it didn't do much. I know that there was a lot of misinformation that popped for a very brief, like for about 4 hours last week on the initial study from Dr. Alex Segal going, see, natural immunity worked in the. It's like, no, that's not what the study said because the study was disease-acquired immunity plus 2 doses, and it did a little better, which is what they've said all along. They've said all along, disease-acquired immunity plus vaccine equal super immunity. You're the immunity of the gods. Not quite. But we've known this all along. You go, duck, duck, go. Go use your duck, duck, go. Do your research. And that's if you have prior Delta or beta infection. That was a very large study that was done out of South Africa. And we're seeing this in Denmark, Sweden, the UK, South Africa, Mozambique. We're seeing this in these countries. 27 states. We're up to 27 states. We were at 26. Idaho, good luck, Idaho. Idaho became state number 27. You know what's amazing to sidebar in Idaho for a minute? I got a report from the Washington State Department of Health. Anybody that gets there is signed up for there, right? You get all their press releases. There's a report came out for all of the medical professionals that have their licenses suspended. It comes out about once a quarter. And so the one for September came out, and there's maybe 24 names on there. Do you know how many people got licenses suspended for intentionally spreading medical misinformation or going into hospitals and like literally threatening people if they don't do these treatments or grifting? Yeah, zero, none, zilch, zero. Do you know as a license, doctor's license in the state of Washington? Dr. Ryan Cole. He has a license here in the state of Washington. And Washington's known about that for 2 years. Don't drive drunk to your job if you're in the medical profession. You may lose your license, apparently, in the state of Washington. But spreading medical disinformation's right okay there. You see the list of states up there. There's 27 of them. Good luck, Idaho. You're going to need it. There is a mix of travel, community spread. But wait, there's more. Wastewater. That's right. When you poop, we're going to talk about poop. When you poop COVID if you've got it. And they can look at the wastewater. They can actually track lots of stuff in wastewater. You know, how many like people are flushing their antibiotics down there, the drugs they don't use, or other illnesses for that. They can use it for other illnesses if you defecated or out. So they're testing the wastewater. They're looking for Omicron. It has been spotted across California. Now, that's what was in the press release. Across. Don't know what that means. Across California, Sacramento is a, no pun intended, hotspot. See what I did there? Is a hotspot. Texas, it's in Houston at about 24, 25, like 20, 1 out of 4 of their wastewater treatment plants. They're seeing it Houston, and Houston is the first city. They have a confirmed case, and that was community spread. And because they're seeing the wastewater, they got community spread. Boulder, Colorado, they're seeing it in the wastewater. Idaho announced today they're going to start testing their wastewater. Huh. Idaho announced tonight they had a case. A few hours before they announced the case, they said, we're going to start testing the wastewater. Idaho's in trouble. Is this the end of COVID? No. Like, this is something like a lot of, it's the end. This is it. We're going to get here. We're all going to have herd immunity and done. No, this isn't. What? What do you mean? We got several problems. First of all, right, this is transspecies. COVID is in animals. It's in white-tailed deer here in the United States. To a lesser extent, a much lesser extent, some cats. But it's big time in deer in the United States. So it's always cooking and lurking, waiting to jump. That's number one. And here's the other thing. Remember, we're talking about all this immunity stuff. If you get immunity from Delta, either from vax or disease-acquired immunity, you probably don't have too much immunity for Omicron. If you get Omicron, that doesn't mean you have immunity for Delta. And I confirmed this. You can have Omicron and Delta at the same time, just to add to the fun this winter. And you could have Omicron, Delta, and flu at the same time. So you probably get a flu shot. By the way, full confession, I haven't got my flu shot yet. I'm like, shit, I got a flu shot. And around here, it's just hard to get an appointment for a shot, period. Someone's telling me to say, quit saying probably. We don't have, because I say probably because we don't have the hard scientific evidence. We have the hard scientific evidence that you can get Omicron and Delta. That's not a probably, that's a definitely. We have the hard scientific evidence that you can get Omicron, Delta, and flu all at the same time. That's not a probably, that's a definitely. But when we're talking about things like functional RT, vaccine breakthrough, these are still probablys. These aren't peer-reviewed tested, peer-reviewed studies, regardless of how good and strong the sources that they came from. And as much as I can look you in the eyes and say, I trust Dr. Alex Segal, absolutely, and not only do I trust him, he is probably the expert on the planet when it comes to Omicron, because he's the person that sequenced it. He's the person who's figured it out. He is the person that has been on the tip of the spear, metaphorically speaking, since the 11th. And here's the challenge, and I want this to be clear for everybody. We have to work with probably, because by the time we get to peer-reviewed and confirmed, based on doubling of 2 to 3 days, by the time we get to peer review, this is going to be over. I don't mean over like it's over like we're all yeet over. I mean, we're going to be on the other side of this because this is how fast this is going to hit. I get your point on probably, but I can't stand up here and speak with authority and say definitely. But there's some things I definitely can talk about definitely, and I've said some things definitely. I want to talk about, I said we were going to get to this earlier about nobody's died. I want to talk about what we have calling circulating wishful thinking and disinformation. Let's talk about some of these. Number one, you might have heard some of this. PCR tests don't work, or PCR tests were recalled by the CDC. No. They came out with a new PCR test, and that test detects COVID and flu at the same time. And so the stop using this test is not because the other test didn't work or doesn't magically work anymore. It is, we have a new and improved and better test, and we would like you to start using this better test that detects COVID and flu at the same time. That's all. They can't detect variants. There's no such thing as variants. How do they, and this is insidious, because what you'll see, particularly on the TikTok, how do they find the variants? They're sea lining. Mods and admins on the other channels know exactly what sea lining is, right? And then if you try to explain to them, well, they can't do it for the PCR test, but they take a subset of those PCR tests and they do genomic sequencing. And through the genomic sequencing, they can identify the modifications within the proteins and within the virus itself and go, this is because of these modifications, this variant off of this lineage. Simple science. Matter of fact, I think it was Laughter and Light was explaining, like you could buy the machine that does this online. There are like instructions on how to do this online if you wanted to do it yourself COVID testing. Only vaccinated people are getting Omicron. Yeah, that's not true. There's a whole bunch of people in the hospital in South Africa right now, some of them on ventilators, that would definitely disagree with you on that. 2,512 people in the hospital tonight, just in Gauteng province, 80% unvaccinated. 80%. 75% of the cases in the United States so far, all 43. We do such a good job at genomic sequencing, he says, dripping with sarcasm. All 43 confirmed tests, 75% of them vaccinated. That means 25% weren't. So that kills the all or the only. No one with a previous COVID infection is getting Omicron. Yeah, we can put that one to bed too in the United States also. Because remember I said there were 43? 6 of those unvaccinated people had prior infections. It's up on the CDC website. I know DuckDuckGo and CDC lies, and I don't want to really get into it anymore. I'm over it. So, no, people with prior COVID infections are getting Omicron. No one is hospitalized due to Omicron. Wrong. Forget South Africa. We've had 43 confirmed cases in the United States because we do a crappy job of genomic sequencing. One of those people was hospitalized, a vaccinated person. They were in the hospital 2 days. So sick enough, that's mild. That, by the way, is considered a mild case. They were in the hospital 2 days and they're back out. 43, one, that's a hospitalization rate of 2.33% on a barely valid sample size of what is going to be a biased sample. What do you mean it's biased? Because the people that are vaccinated that are getting this are travelers. They're travel cases. And if you're talking about people who are international traveling, they are more than likely, not 100%, but more than likely my age or younger, and my health are better. And they're vaccinated. So they're people that probably weren't going to land in the hospital unless they had some additional issues that were going on. So you have a biased subset out of the gate. There were also 2 people that had to go to the hospital to get stabilization. Person from Georgia who, this is the one where I'm like, person in Georgia gets on the plane sick with Omicron, flies to New Jersey, gets to New Jersey, decides to go to the hospital because they don't feel so bad. They got to get stabilized at the hospital. They send their happy ass back home, and then they find out they got Omicron after they flew sick and contagious on a friggin' airplane from Georgia. Thanks. That's why I was against travel bans. Oh, by the way, the CDC concluded that the first Omicron case in the United States where the person was symptomatic was on the 15th. If they were symptomatic on the 15th, that means they were exposed 12th, 13th, 14th, maybe even as far back as the 11th, which then becomes a really strong piece of evidence that this may not have come out of South Africa or Botswana in the first place. We know for a fact the first symptomatic case now was in the United States in the 15th. And again, I don't go cough on you and now you are symptomatic and pop a test. It takes several days. It takes, we don't know with Omicron specifically, but it takes from 2 to 5 days with the other variants. Original variants up to 5 days. We get to Delta, it was about 2 to 3 days. It's only mild, it's a cold, flu, Fauci said, South Africa said so. We already covered this. The number of people in the ICU has doubled in Gauteng province in a week. So, no. And the number of people on ventilators has gone up 140% in a week. So no, this is not, and again, we look at the hospitalization numbers in South Africa and it's no. This just proves vaccines don't work. There's no sense in getting a booster. We've already beaten that one into the ground earlier tonight. There's a lot of data that shows that the vaccines are keeping people out of the hospital. They're certainly keeping people off of ventilators. As someone who's been on a ventilator, I'll tell you right now, highly overrated experience. I don't recommend it. It's like when you're coming off the ventilator, they pull back the paralytics and they pull back the anesthesia, the happy sleepy medicine. Which, by the way, you're not happy sleepy. That's an illusion too. You have screwed up dreams, and you kind of like wake up from that. It's like waking up in the Matrix and realizing you're a human battery. It's not fun, and you're going to do everything you can to get out of those restraints, and you want that breathing tube out of you like you have no idea, and you don't want to know. All right, this is the end of COVID. You're going to get herd immunity. We already covered that. No, this isn't. We had a chance. Now we got this. And the other thing is we already have Omicron variants. And the Omicron variant that we have doesn't have this S-drop protein. So it's stealth. It's hidden. It's a ninja. What's our situation in Washington State? It's 74.9% of everybody 12 and older is fully vaccinated. We have 2.5 million Washingtonians who are eligible for a booster right now, especially because the 16 and 17s. 12 to 15-year-olds were starting to be vaccinated in May, but they had not gotten their second dose for most of June, so they wouldn't be eligible, and they're not eligible anyway. So we could still do very simple math and look at this and go. We've had 1.35 million Washingtonians who have gotten boosters. We have 2.5 million boosters that need 2.5 million Washingtonians need boosters tomorrow. Because without a booster, you're putting yourself in increased risk. If you got Johnson & Johnson and you have a good booster, and don't get the J&J as the boost if you got Johnson & Johnson. Go Pfizer or Moderna. Don't go the J&J. I'm Pfizer or Dara. Not Pfizer. John O'Dara. John So I don't know. I have Johnson & Johnson and Moderna. We have about 750 available staffed acute care beds across Washington State available. We have about 150 ICU beds available right now in the state of Washington. We're at 86 new COVID cases per 100K residents. That's moderate transmission. Last week we're at 103.6. That was high transmission. We saw a little spike because of Thanksgiving, but that seems to be going away. But there's something cooking in a county, and I want to talk about that. We're going to get there in a minute. We don't have positivity data in the state of Washington. We don't know how many tests are coming back. We haven't known since September 15th, and we're not going to know at least until January 1. And the state of Washington Department of Health isn't happy that I keep bringing this point up. We already have a statewide mask mandate. We can't move the needle on there. And we have been bouncing for more than 2 weeks now between 700 to 800 people with COVID hospitalized. And we have been bouncing around between about 110 and 120 of those people on ventilators. So we still have a pretty high threshold in the state of Washington on the number of people that are hospitalized. Statewide hospital occupancy is like around 85 to 90%, depending on the health region. A couple of outliers there. A couple are a little higher, a couple a little lower. What's our current sit rep? We have 26 counties with moderate transmission, no counties with low transmission. We have 17 counties that were with low or moderate transmission last week. So we have nobody that's low. Garfield County, you got them there. See, like I've got it. You can't see the slide. Garfield County is extreme. Their 7-day moving average is over 400. Now, here's the wild thing that national audience, maybe a lot of Washingtonians don't know. If you watch Rick and Morty, Garfield County is shaped like a plumbus, like very seriously. It's a really odd shaped county. It's shaped like a plumbus. Go look up plumbus. That's number one. It has 2,200 residents in the entire county. Very rural, very agricultural. And they have jumped to over 400. So there's two possibilities. This is strictly my opinion. I have no test data to back this up. So there's two possibilities. Possibility number one, there was some kind of community thing over the Thanksgiving weekend because there's only 2,200 people. It's a rural agricultural county, and a lot of people got together for that, and somebody was sick and spread it around. I think because we know that Omicron is in Washington State, we know that it was here around Thanksgiving. We know that the King County case is community spread. I think Garfield County is a hot spot because I think Omicron is in Garfield because the numbers to be at 400 in that county, as spread out as everybody is. The thing about Garfield County, people have watched, and we do in the weekly updates know this. There have been times where Washington State, you look at the map of cases, and Washington State is bright red, and Garfield County has 0 cases, none. And every county around them is just lit up with 7-day moving averages of 200, 250, 300, and Garfield's at 0. Garfield up that high is cray-cray, especially considering how high it did get during the Delta. Garfield County didn't even have a death until Delta came through. That's how like insulated it's been. Lewis County, home of Joint Base Lewis McChord, is very high. And then we have these other counties here that are high. There's a lot of them that are usual suspects. Pierce County, north of King County, Seattle Bellevue, Snohomish County, I'm sorry, Pierce County is south, Tacoma. Snohomish County, which is north, both of them high transmission on either side of the Seattle Bellevue corridor. Vaccines work. You can't see this. We're going to read the numbers. What are we seeing for 14-day moving average? In the counties that are 70% or better vaccinated, and that's total population, by the way. That's not 12 and up or 5 and up. That's the whole population. That represents 2.3 million people in the state of Washington. The 14-day moving average is 154.2. All 3 of those counties are moderate transmission, including the most populous county, King County. For 60 to 69%, they're at 277.5. And what's pushing that is Snohomish County, because Snohomish County is in that high transmission area. So that's 1.37 million people. It's almost that 60% is like almost Snohomish County by itself. And so that's why you're seeing that higher there. 50 to 59 is 247.7, 40 to 49, 287.6, and 32.2, that's the basement, to 39.9%, they're at 241.1. That's only 151,000 people. The comments on TikTok. Yes, what about the comments on TikTok? I don't have Clark County in front of me. I am sorry. I don't have Clark County right in front of me. If we are mutuals on TikTok, send me a DM and I will give you the Clark County number. I don't have it on my fingertips. I will tell you that Clark County is below 100, 7-day moving average. I can tell you that. And I think Clark County is in the 50 to 59.99% vaccinated range. I don't think they've broken to 60. I think they're getting close though. So what can you do? We're almost done with the brain dump. If you're not vaccinated, get vaccinated. If you're eligible for a booster, get your booster. That's really urgent. Super important to get that. Wear a KN95 or an N95 mask with an exam or a cloth second mask over, because that extends the life of the KN95 or the N95 mask. Wash your hands. You're supposed to be washing your hands anyway. But wash your hands. Avoid crowded indoor spaces, which we're getting like into the teeth of the holiday shopping stuff. So pick your battles. Plan your grocery trips and outings once a week. Socially distance when possible. Cancel your travel plans if you can to reduce your exposure. It's not because travel bans don't work. You're just trying to reduce, because they don't work. It's just you're trying to reduce your exposure. And I'm going to close like I did last week. German health minister on November 22nd, before we even knew about Omicron, said Germans will be, in his German accent, Germans will be vaccinated, cured, or dead by the end of the winter. Yeah. And yeah, I think there's a lot to that. All right, that's COVID. I don't live in. What are you afraid of? Do I look scared? I'm not afraid. What are you afraid of? See, when everyone says something like that, you're just projecting on me. You're just projecting on me. I'm not afraid by knowledge. I'm not afraid of information. I am informed. If hearing scary statistics and data is scary to you, then maybe you shouldn't be looking for scary statistics and data. And we're going to do a little brief pause for the cause. That's what we're going to do. Hey there, TikTok. We are playing a commercial on yeah, we're gonna have to update the end of that. That's not going to be coming in fall of 2021 because of, ironically, because of Omicron. So we are going to have to update that. But and I know people are excited for the trailer for Namibia. By the way, the trailer is up on our TikTok channel, so you can go watch it there. I do want to pause for a minute about the breaking news that I talked about at the top of the hour. Um, I don't know a lot. I literally had just like a message handed to me when we were starting it here. There is a report in Arkansas of a major long track tornado that has caused significant damage. It has torn through apparently a nursing home and going through the path, and there is at least 2 confirmed deceased from this long track severe tornado. That's about all we know at this time. Our thoughts are with the people of Arkansas and for the emergency services and the people that are doing the search there. I want to talk now a little bit about Seattle politics. Some of the people are just going to love this. And the Sawant recall vote. What a shock! She wasn't recalled. Anybody paying attention could have seen that coming. There are about 40,000 votes that were involved in that. I think what a lot of people don't understand, particularly national audience, is this was not a Seattle-wide vote. This was for a council seat, so this isn't a district or a region, right? So typically Capitol Hill area of Seattle. That's the only people that are voting on this. It's not a citywide vote. Yeah, it was close. There was a ton of outside money that poured into Seattle, trying to drive the no vote. Uh, there's nothing shocking here that she survived the vote. I'm not a huge fan. I'm not a huge fan. And I've talked about this before, and it's not for the reasons that you think that I'm not a huge fan. Um, but yeah, she survived. There's like 500 contestant votes because of signatures and stuff. Because we do a mail-in ballot here. They would almost have to all go to the recall for it to move the needle. Could it happen? Could anything can happen? So we'll have to see what happens there. The other thing I want to talk about is, Jenny Durkin. Did I not predict this? Mayor Jenny Durkin is going to run the clock out on those missing texts. We predicted that. Everyone could see that coming. And I know, like the Seattle Times, because they're really trying not to let this story go. And they're like, we still don't know what happened to her. We're never going to know what happened to the missing texts. We're never going to know what happened to, and everyone's like not even talking about how all the text disappeared for numerous leaders within the Seattle Police Department, for Fire Chief Scoggins, and it all conveniently disappeared almost through to the end of CHOP. All of a sudden, we have texts after that disastrous community meeting where nothing happened, and the people who were in that community meeting on the 25th of June or the 26th of June weren't even from the community, and made a list of requests and demands that Mayor Durkin could dismiss out of hand because there was just nothing there. So she's going to run the clock out. Nothing's ever going to come of it. And we're never really, well, all right. They said, I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but he's the one who ordered the evacuation of the East Precinct that Carmen Best didn't know. And then there's been some back and forth and got busted a rank and busted in pay. I know, he's going to get that rank back in retirement. He's going to get his full pension at level. So we're never really going to know. We're never going to know the real story, the 100% unvarnished truth. Who ordered the evacuation of the East Precinct? Why did they order the evacuation of the East Precinct? And we're never going to know it. And we had talked about a few weeks ago, maybe it's been like a month ago, right? There was this arrest that happened because in February of 2020, I can't say the name of the bar. I just realized that if I say the name of the bar, TikTok's going to have a fit. And I can't even use the start of the letter because I might get zinged for that too. Because I can't use that letter on TikTok. It's like newspeak over here. TikTok moderation and AI is Orwellian. It's a bar for the LGBTQIA community that goes by a name that some people would actually think is a slur, and it's not a slur, and it's actually meant to be a celebration of it, and I can't say it because of TikTok. And somebody tried to burn that bar down in February of 2020, and they used incendiary devices, and they did it in the alleyway that is directly between this bar and the East Precinct building. Now, if you remember, one of the big arguments about protecting the East Precinct and not letting marchers go by there in the first place was if that building catches fire, that whole block's going to go up. People in apartments are going to die. We're not going to be able to control the fire. It's going to be doom, terrible, awful. But somebody already tried to burn the building down in February. And to the point, by the way, there were people in the bar when they did this. There were 57 patrons in the bar because this was before COVID, February 2020. There were people in the bar. And the fire, when I say an alleyway, right? You're from, well, alleyway, right? No. We're talking like the length of my arms and you're touching the two walls. Alleyway. Old buildings tight together. Yet, you're not hearing Fox News talking about someone tried to burn down these pieces in February of 2020. Well, that's, I guess, because it was LGBTQIA. And, we don't hear about that. So this is why I say Fire Chief Scoggins' texts, which also got deleted. Don't forget that. His texts are gone. Like, it's also sus, and we're never going to know. All right, I beat that one into the ground. Next thing I want to talk about is our democracy's in trouble. It's really in trouble. And I want to kind of give a little bit of a history lesson. If you start looking at the pieces that are moving on the chessboard, you have Ron DeSantis, governor of Florida, goes, I want to set up my own little private National State Guard thing, but they report to me. Now, full stop, there's already like 20 or 22 states that have this. Blue states and red states alike. California has it, New York has it, Texas has it, right? So I just listed off 2 blue states and a very red state. So what he wants to do isn't like total fuckery. The whole thing that they report to me exclusively, that's fuckery. That's different than what's set up in the other states. I'm just showing you the pieces on the chessboard. The next thing you have is this whole Trump news network thing, blah, 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 which honestly, because people like Manda Rose on TikTok, and Disinfo and Saint Deville and Disinfo Gal, they're watching this a lot harder than me. And there's one other. His name's escaping me on TikTok, and he watches that a lot more closely. It's not exactly my lane, so I don't know the full thing about the $1 billion. But they're trying to set up their own media empire. So far, not going well, but they're trying to set up. That's the second piece on the chessboard. Now I'm going to connect those pieces. You had Matt Gaetz, yeah, the one who, yeah, that Matt Gaetz, the one who was here in was here for a Trump-supported congressman and had like 50 people show up, and he was standing in a trailer in a dirt parking lot because that's about the draw that Matt Gaetz can get. And Steve Bannon were in the air. And one of the things they were openly talking about is when Trump becomes president in 2024, we're going to deploy shock troops who are loyal into these offices in Washington, D.C. to take over these things. Now, you might dismiss this as rantings of a guy who, don't forget, was convicted, Steve Bannon, of ripping off a bunch of people for a wall that he never built in Texas and pocketing that money. Don't forget that. And the guy who didn't get paid, who has the wall on his property, is like, will somebody buy this freaking wall? And the company that built it is like, will somebody buy this wall? We want to get paid. And remember, he got pardoned. So I get it's real easy to dismiss him, right? And he's certainly not in the good graces of the former social media icon known as Donald Trump. Now let's connect the dots. And now we're going to go to history. If we look at history and we look at Germany, since all the anti-vaxxers are really fond about bringing up Germany, let's bring up some real history. If we look at Germany, you have Crazy Adolf, and he is coming up in power. He is legally put into power by a legal vote of the Reichstag, with his party only controlling 32% of the seats because he went and built coalitions. Now, he tried to take over by force the Beer Hall Push, 1923. A little more than a dozen people are killed. They were successful out of the gate, but then they were counting on some key allies, particularly with some German military resource. The German military is very small at that time, to support them. And they were like, yeah, no, that's suckers. Kind of sounds familiar with January 6th a little bit, doesn't it? And he went to prison, but he was there for less than a year. He wrote a book. Can't say what the book is because of TikTok. My Struggle. I could say that. He was a celebrity while he was in jail. He had guest interviews. And while he was there, one of the things that he did was, because part of the thing was, we are outlawing your party, which we haven't done in the United States, First Amendment, blah, blah, blah. We are outlawing your party. And they're like, okay, we're outlawed. We're outlawed. And he's like, okay, hey, Goebbels, come here. Okay, what you got? It's like, dude, well, I'm here in jail. Like, you got to make sure that nobody says they in charge of the group on the down low, right? Because we're not supposed to exist anyway. So we got to keep this on the DL. We're going to keep it going, and it's going to be you, but we're not going to talk about it. And he's like, I got it, because he was a master of propaganda. And so they went up, and one of the things they started, because what he learned sitting in a jail cell is, I am never going to take this country over by brute force. I'm going to have to take it over by political will and playing chess, metaphorically speaking. And so they started buying up a bunch of newspapers and radio stations and created their own media empire. Sound familiar? Sound familiar what's going on? That's the first piece on the chessboard. Let's talk now about DeSantis, who wants to build his private guard. Ron DeSantis builds his private guard in Florida. You have organizations like the Tough Lads. I can't say who they are. TikTok. The Tough Lad. You have organizations like the Tough Tads. And at the end of the day, they're kind of a drunken mob. Sorry if you're associated with them, but we've seen the videos, and that's how they kind of act. They're basically kind of a drunken mob. But if we go back to Germany and the brown shirts, they were a drunken mob. And they needed two things to stop being a drunken mob. They needed money and they needed a leader. And they got money through the media empire, and they got leadership in Rom, because Rom was this World War I hero, which, by the way, when you had the Night of the Long Knives, that was the end of Rom. So, who lives in Florida? I get that he's in jail right now, but who is it that lives in Florida? Enrique Torino lives in Florida. Yeah, that guy. He's the head of the Tough Lads. Huh. Huh. Fascinating. So then what's the next step? You have the election in 1932 in Germany. That collapses. You have another election that happens on there. Bismarck has to cut a deal. He has to cut a deal. And so Bismarck tries to cut a deal. And in part of that, what he does is, okay, you're going to be chancellor. Fine. I'll make you chancellor. Because Bismarck was like, this is not going to go well if I make this guy chancellor. But you're only going to get a few cabinet seats. We're going to get to pick some of the other ministers and cabinets. And he's like, sure, fine. And one of the cabinets that he got, Crazy Adolf, was the interior. Because everyone's like, whatever. What does that group do? You know what the first thing he did? He gave it over to the head of the brown shirts. And you know what the first thing the person with the brown shirts did? Federalized all of them and made them police officers with a stroke of a pen. 50,000 brown shirts, who now they didn't have to raise money to organize and pay them because they're now on the government payroll. And those became the shock troops that fanned out through the German government to take everything over. History's repeating itself. Connect the dots, follow it. You can see it. Why would they be talking about it in the open? Because they can. Because our government is making the exact same mistakes as the Weimar Republic did, even worse. And they know it. Anybody that thinks that Trump's going to be indicted, you're dreaming. Never. All they're trying to do right now is run out the clock to midterms. That's all they're trying to do. Because all the investigations end in the beginning of 2023. And then that's it. We're headed off the cliff at that point. I don't know what to tell you, but that's what's going on. Yeah, I know the tough lads deny he's the leader, and I know several states have disavowed, like Indiana, I know, disavowed him. Like Indiana, like broke off, and they're like their own Indiana tough lad thing. The tough lads. That's from Squidbillies. I can't say that Squidbillies has been amazing. This last season of Squidbillies has been amazing. This like it's the last season because it turns out that the person that did the voice of Early Collier turned out to be a real chud. Um, so it's like, oh, he wasn't acting. That's why his voice acting was so good. He really believed everything he was saying. They got the comedian Tracy Morgan, which if you've watched the show, it's very jarring the first couple of episodes because like Tracy Morgan has an accent from the Bronx. So you've gone from this southern, Georgia, Tennessee accent to New York Bronx. It's very jarring. But they lampoon everything from like middle 2020 to up now. It's just magnificent. Anyway, they came up with the tough lads. Glenn's a tough lad. If you know who Glenn is, then you've got that. Oh, Shelley. Well, but you see, okay, so comment over on the other channels is he'll drop over before any of this happens. That's possible. But then there's other people, DeSantis, because quite frankly, like, I want to be really clear. You don't become president of the United States being an idiot. I said this about George Bush 43, right? George Bush 43 was not stupid. You do not become president by being an idiot. It's impossible. Um, you can be corrupt. You can make terrible decisions. You could be all of these things and become president, but you're not stupid. Um, being willfully ignorant is different than stupid. So the thing is, yeah, if he drops over, there's other people. DeSantis, Abbott, Dan Patrick, Josh Hawley. Uh, you know, I know fans would probably, like would say maybe Bobo or Marjorie Taylor. They're too toxic. They're just too toxic. Um, and when it comes, you don't become president of the United States by being stupid. And those two make Sarah Palin look like she's on Mensa. Another thing on Sarah Palin, total sidebar on this. If you remember Kate plus eight or whatever, the ones that had the 8 kids and she divorced the husband. It was all in the tabloids. It's really weird. And then like Sarah Palin had her own show at the same time. There's an episode. I don't know if it's Kate plus eight, and I don't know if it's Sarah Palin show. I think it's like Kate plus eight, and they go and visit Sarah Palin in Alaska, and Kate is so awful and obnoxious that she made Sarah Palin look like somebody you wanted to hang out with. And I say that with somebody who can't identify with anything with Sarah Palin. And they were like fishing on a river and eating moose meat hot dogs that were homemade, and like listening to music. And I was like, I'm totally down for this. Are you kidding me? I'll drink some beer. I'll eat some moose meat homemade hot dogs. I suck at fishing because I have no patience, but if maybe you're going to teach me how to fish a little better for some salmon, I'm down. Like Kate was awful, just like, and I walked away from that episode like, oh my god, you just made Sarah Palin look palatable in comparison. Yeah, maybe. Comment over on the Facebook side that George really was stupid. He was just a puppet, and Dick Cheney was pulling the strings. Eh, no, I don't know. I don't know if I fully agree with that. He's a voracious reader. Like a lot of people, like he is a voracious reader. Donald Trump, on the other hand, doesn't read. That goes into willful ignorance versus just plain old stupid. All right, TikTok, we're kind of winding down on the stuff that you all probably care about. Um, we haven't been bumped off the air yet. I'm going to see like what the stats were on this. If this worked out well, probably what we'll try to start to do is get a couple more moderators on here, and we'll try to coordinate them up with our community team. And that way I have a little better visibility on your questions as they're coming up, because you've probably seen them going like this. So it's a little hard for me to come in and like go and, oh, here's your question. Oh, there's your question, because I've got 3 screens that you can't see in the studio here around me at the moment. But I am going to talk about weather, local weather, and you're going to be like, whatever. All right, let's talk about local weather. French toast. You can stick around for the French toast warning. You'll love this worth it. French toast warning. We are under an official French toast warning in Western Washington. If you're not familiar with French toast warning, TV, what TV you speak of? There's a big TV right here. I'm pointing there. I've got big monitor here. I got monitor here. I got this here. I got the phone here. Okay. So let's talk about French toast warning. This is an inside joke that started in the community that I'm in a Facebook community group that has like 19,000 people. In 1978, like 78, that doesn't even happen in Washington. A joke was kind of born in the New England states during the blizzard of 78. Go look that up. Second biggest non-tropical storm to hit the United States from 1900 to 1999 was the blizzard of 78. A little teeny tiny kid, like the snow was almost like to here on me when it was all done. And when you're a little teeny tiny kid and you get a 3-day blizzard with like 4 feet of snow, it's like the most amazing thing you've ever seen in your life. Um, not so much for your parents. Anyway, Blizzard 78 was one of the first storms where eggs, milk, and bread just disappeared out of the grocery stores. You could not, in the hours before the storm, you couldn't find eggs, milk, or bread to save your life. The key ingredients to French toast. And when you lose power, now of course you lose power in a snowstorm, you could just put the milk out in the snowbank. You can't do that here in our area where we're 45 and the milk will start to go bad. So hence this is why we say our joke about it's the French toast alert. You need to go to the store and buy all the milk, eggs, and bread. And that's what happens here in Seattle when we get a forecast for 2 inches of snow. 2 inches of snow, all of a sudden you can't find milk, egg, or bread, milk, eggs, or bread in the grocery stores. It was like toilet paper with COVID. So we are in a French toast warning. Let me tell you what's going on. Winds are going to pick up. Peak winds will start about 10. Peak winds will be between 2 and 6 in the morning. For our area, 20 to 35 miles an hour, gusts to 55 miles an hour. It's going to dump tonight. We're probably looking at a good inch of rain, and that is after our wettest fall in history. We had almost 19 inches of rain in SeaTac Airport from September, October, and November. The ground is really saturated. So what is this going to do? 1 inch of rain, it's going to move the needle again on landslide risk. That's number one. Not a big issue where we are, certainly not like houses falling down hills, national audience. But possibly you could have some roads blocked in the morning from some spot mudslides. But the second thing is where the ground is super saturated like this, it doesn't take a lot of wind to pull over a tree, especially if it's an evergreen tree that is not in a stand. Those are the trees that get knocked over in these storms. We get soaking wet wind, soaking wet ground. Evergreen roots don't go deep, they fan out. And then if you have a tree that is just standing by itself and you get these winds, the ground is soaked, the wind pops it over. So if you're in the usual trouble spots, Finn Hill, Kingsgate, and lately Totem Lake and Juanita, power's been going out there when you just think about it. Yeah, don't be surprised you don't have power when you wake up in the morning or lose power overnight. So that's number one. And again, we got the heavy rain that's going on. The wind this is not going to be like a frontal situation. In other words, we have a cold front go through, and the wind goes up and then it drops off. It's going to stay pretty windy for most of the day. But after we get past that 10 in the morning, we're not going to be in this 40, 50, 55 mile an hour gust territory. We're not going to be in this 20, 30, 35 mile an hour steady wind territory. Winds are going to be coming up from the south. And so that is going to be that is really going to impact Kenmore, Juanita, and Finn Hill. And I know people from there are like, I hate when you call us out. I hate why do you have to call us out? Because what's going to happen is there's nothing to block that wind blowing across Lake Washington. So as it starts rolling up Finn Hill, as it hits Juanita, going up into Juanita Bay, and as it hits up through Kenmore, there's nothing to slow that wind down. Winds are going to be stronger the closer you get to the foothills and the further north you go. So that's what's going to be going on. The last I looked, Seattle was not under a wind advisory. It was on the other side of Lake Washington. That may have changed since we did the show notes and before we came up here. So we've got that. Snow, that's the other one to talk about, because if you're looking, I was going to pull up the cell phone. I was like, oh, that's right. I got cell phone with TikTok. This is so funny. Almost everyone's left on TikTok. They don't want to hear about this local weather shit. For snow, you probably see, like if you have your weather apps, you might be seeing the snowflakes. Yeah, I'm not rocking it. I'm not, that could change. It's really far out. One day, I think it's like Thursday, but that's so far out. Maybe, but I don't see anything sticking. It's going to take a lot. The ground is super saturated. The ground is still really warm. We have not had, we've barely had a killing frost, right? I think we've had like one day where we got like to 30 or 29. So I just don't think we're going to see a lot there. Rashi cares about the weather. Jen is saying Evening News said that Seattle is under a wind advisory. Let me check. Let me see if it updated. I can do that right now. Because of COVID, I don't have somebody here that can just like walk over and hand it to me. Let's see. There is a gale warning, but would be a marine advisory. Yeah, Seattle has now been added to the wind advisory. Up to 50 miles an hour, so 5 miles an hour less. So there you go. Seattle's out of the wind advisory. If you live in an area where the power probably goes out, get ready for the power to go out tonight. Might be hard to make your French toast tomorrow if you don't have a gas stove. We have a gas stove, so we're good. All right, I think I've covered everything here that I plan to cover here tonight. Thank you, TikTok. This is the first time we tried this out. I think it's gone okay. Again, I'm gonna have to look at the stats and the data. I know we had, I think there was one moderator on there. We'll find out what they had to say. I saw some comments popping by that I wasn't able to respond to everything there. And I think that's it. So good night, malcontents, he says. Malcontent News is a team of journalists, activists, and researchers with 3 key missions. A commitment to show an unfiltered view of the before, during, and after of key events, live, as it happens. To defend the First Amendment using our rights of a free press. And to amplify the voices of underrepresented individuals including Black, Indigenous, persons of color, and the LGBTQIA+ community. Our team is committed to seeking equality for all and holding those in power accountable. The easiest way to support Malcontent News is to bookmark our website at malcontentnews.com, like and follow us on Facebook, subscribe to us on YouTube, and follow us on Twitter, TikTok, Twitch, Instagram, and in the Google News app. To provide financial support, you can become a patron, make a one-time donation through Venmo, or link your Twitch account to your Amazon Prime account and use your free subscription to subscribe to Malcontent News. Thank you for supporting independent journalism and for being a malcontent.
You fit the profile! You're the malcontent!
Nobody wants to hear the nonsensical ravings of a loudmouth malcontent.
He said malcontent Antifa, fuck you!
You are the biggest hypocrite on the face of the planet.
I say that you're a terrible reporter. That's what I say.